Yo, so guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to America's oldest neighborhood is problematic. I don't know why this would be the case. I mean, America's oldest neighborhood. I don't know how old it would be. I'm going to assume it would be 200 plus. Now, I'm going to say 250 years old. Now, it's got to be older than that. I mean, it's got to be one of the first, areas really built in the US because, I mean, I don't know really why, but, US cities obviously are a lot more modern and they're a lot newer. So they're built in such a perfect way, like lines and squares. The oldest neighborhoods, though, I mean, I don't know if that will be a bit different. I'm not too sure, but we're going to check it out to see because I guess the planning wasn't the same. But I don't really know what to expect, so we're just going to see, and yeah, I'm sure it'll be fascinating. But we're going to jump into this. Link's also in the description to my Patreon if you're interested in that. And why is it so blurry? Yeah, let's jump into this.
If you're a tourist coming to Philadelphia for the first time, I can guess the cliche locations that you'll probably end up at. You'll stand in a stupid line to see the famous cracked bell, even though you can see it from the outside of the building. You'll probably overpay for some mediocre cheesesteaks at the food establishment equivalent of Two Fort, and most likely, you'll look like one of the many that ran up and down our art museum steps reenacting a movie that ripped off of Joe Frazier. But if you spend a little extra time visiting the Old City section of Philly, then you'll most likely end up at another popular tourist location, Alfred's Alley. Alfred's Alley...
I can already see a British flag. Alfred's Alley. This place looks wild. This looks cool though. Why is it problematic? This is wild to me. I mean, it is kind of like you are in. I mean, it does feel like you're in the UK. I mean, it looks. You can sort of tell it's a bit different, but you've got the cobblestone floor. That is literally where you what you get in. I'd say every city in the UK. You have areas that just are fully cobblestone, but more than this, obviously. But this just reminds me of that. Is cobblestoning, is that really a thing in the US at all? Or is it just not, other than areas like this? But this is wild.
Alfred's Alley is the oldest residential street in the United States with continuous habitation. Yes, that's a lot of modifiers, but hey, it's hard to classify what is a street in the first place. The alley was originally laid out in 1702 by Jeremiah Alfred.
So 321 years ago.
He soon became home to a thriving community of artisans and trade people. Alfred's Alley remained a residential street for over 200 years. However, in the early 1900s, the alley fell into disrepair. In the 1930s, a group of preservationists began work to restore Alfred's Alley. They purchased several of the abandoned houses and restored them to their original condition.
Damn.
The alley was designated a historical landmark in 1966.
Good.
Today, Alfred's Alley is a popular tourist destination, and the alley is home to a variety of shops, restaurants, and art galleries. But there are also some major issues with the street that really encapsulates a lot of the problems with American urban planning and historic preservation. But before I get into that, I have to mention that I've been traveling a lot in the US, so that means that when I go to a new city, I'm happy to get a new transit card for the local system. They're a fun thing to collect, but I never really have a
sponsor. Getting his money, you love to see it. Code Urbanist at checkout. I mean, this is quite an old video, so I'm sure the ad isn't still in play, but if it is, you know what to do.
Out to enjoy 55% off items in the store. Thanks again to Esker for sponsoring this video.
Getting his money. The problems with Alfred's.
Even though Alfred's Alley is cute on the surface, there are literally problems with the street and neighborhood.
By the way, this is a cool ass pumpkin. I've never seen a pumpkin like this before. That is crazy. How good at art have you got to be to do that? I mean, that looks 3D.
They're hidden just
behind. I mean, it is 3D. I mean, that is literally what it is, but... So they've obviously not carved the pumpkin fully through, right? That is so fascinating.
Facades. When you see people taking or posting pictures of Alfred's Alley, you'll notice that majority of the pictures are facing to the west towards 2nd Street, and there's a reason for that. At the other end of the street, there's a huge monolithic wall that seems to be surrounding the neighborhood. If you know anything about the problems with American city planning, I bet you can guess what's behind it. So let's zoom out slightly and...
I was not expecting that. This was looking like it was just going into a little suburban area, so there'd be more houses and stuff. There's not just a wall, it's a highway. Bloody hell, I was not expecting that at all.
Yup, I-95 has completely cut off the neighborhood from the waterfront, and it's insane that this was done as late as the early 1980s. Just like many cities in the US, Philly also suffered from urban freeways plowing through some of the most valuable areas in the city. Here are some side-by-sides showing the waterfront in the 1940s and then in 1981 when I-95 was under construction. You can see the total destruction of the majority of the buildings that used to connect our streets to the Delaware River. What's more insane is that they didn't even build sound barriers originally, and neighbors had to deal with almost 7 years of direct highway noise until PennDOT finally put up a wall. I-95 is the most obvious problem with the area, and I wish it would be removed. Any serious world-class city does not allocate its waterfront land for ugly highway infrastructure. Beyond I-95, let's talk about a more local issue that highlights a common American problem in planning. Ironically, the overuse of historic preservation. I think that
Wait, historic preservation, so they're trying to keep it looking well, right?
it's fantastic that Alfred's Alley and the majority of Philly's oldest neighborhoods have been saved, but there's a tendency to overprotect them from even the most harmless things in the name of NIMBYism and fear. Alfred's Alley is not immune to this. When you visit the street, you'll notice 2 empty, ugly plots of land that adorn the entrance to the alley from 2nd Street. The northern plot is private land used for parking for the business next door, and the southern lot is owned by the new apartment building that went up in 2017. When the new apartment building was constructed, the previous small plaza with the flagpole had to be removed so that all the utilities for the building could be routed through the lot. But no need to worry. The developer and the local planning commission and neighborhood groups plan to replace it with a new park.
See, that would be cool. I'm assuming that probably didn't happen, right? But that would be a nice little addition. It's just such a shame that they've done that, because I was not expecting. Again, that sort of like walking onto that road, the Elfrith's Way or whatever it's called, and then it leading to like other homes that maybe don't look the same, but just like building like a nice neighborhood. And I understand the importance of roads in the US and like having to get from point A to point B, and also like just general things like that, but it's just like, come on, it would have been beautiful, man. And it still is beautiful for that area, but then there's just that wall. It's just like, well, there's a nice little walk into somewhere and then you're just walking back out. But I guess it is a start, you know?
Plans went as far as having full renders and even multiple public workshops to improve the park's aesthetics, and everyone seems super positive about it, except for one group. The Alfred's Alley Historical Society didn't agree to the proposed plan.
I mean, I guess I kind of understand it. You want to keep it looking a bit more historical, and this area would have been modern. But also, with the wall area, can't they like build like, maybe this is a stupid idea for me, but you can have like garden walls. I don't know what they're called. Basically, just having it as a garden on the wall, so it just like flowers and it looking green and that sort of stuff. It would just look a lot nicer. Maybe that's not what they would want either, and maybe it's a stupid idea. But I'm just sort of thinking that would be quite a cool addition instead of just a brick wall. You know, like that just sort of looks a bit meh. You know.
They wanted a more British garden-style park, which would have costed extra. Even after the changes to the proposed plan, they were the reason why it was never developed. Here's their change petition using blanketing statements to oppose the plan like harmonious, appropriate, and threatened. So, in the present day, instead of having a nice park and plaza entrance to Alfred's Alley, we now have a balding patch of weeds and dirt. The old saying, "Do not let perfection be the enemy of the good," really applies here. If they really cared about historical preservation, they wouldn't have cars driving down the street in the first place. It's one thing to have mismatching historical pieces, and it's another to have an awkwardly placed bloated SUV driving down the middle of your beautiful old street. Oh no, you might have to walk a few extra steps. The horror. But Alfred's Alley isn't the only example of historic preservation getting in the way of cities trying to change things for the better. There was another good example in Philly that happened quite recently. The St. Lawrence Church was a church in the Fishtown neighborhood that had an impressive stone facade and construction. Unfortunately, in 2014, it was abandoned because of large cracks that started forming in the stone facade. The city later condemned the church, citing collapse would happen in a decade without proper work to the building. The next year, in 2015, a developer offered to fix and keep the facade but turn the church into an apartment building. Unfortunately, that
What?
plan was nimbied away because of historic preservation reasons, and the developer ended up selling the church in 2019. And in 2020, the church was slated for demolition.
That's just sad. That is quite sad. That's like history there, man. I mean, I don't know how old the church was, but it's a unique sort of, like having a church in the middle of, like, because in the UK and in my city, you'll just have like a church like this just in the middle of a residential area. There'll be homes surrounding it, like road homes, like on a street, and then there'll just be a random church, and then a random church in like another 5 minutes down the road, and just like dotted around. It just adds something to the scenery and stuff. I mean, that's just quite sad to me.
Today, a normal 8-story apartment building with 49 units has risen in its place.
Bruh.
Again, this is another story of don't let perfect be the enemy of the good, because now there's no church building at all. On a more positive note, if you are visiting Philly and looking for historical places to go, I can suggest a few things. Alfred's Alley is great, but it's not my personal favorite old street in the city. My favorite street would happen to be Quince Street between Locust and Lombard Streets.
This is pretty
This
cool.
time-
There's another British flag there. This is actually some more cobblestone as well. So I guess there is quite a few cobblestone areas in certain US cities then.
Tiny Street is connected all around to tons of other super walkable streets, and it isn't cut off by a highway. I'll have to make another video sometime showing off my favorite locations in the city, but anyway, let's try to promote and support good projects even if they aren't perfect. Urban planning is full of compromises, otherwise you get someone like Robert Moses. Thanks to Esker.
That's quite cool actually, the little streets there. They do remind me quite a lot of the UK. I guess that is the case as well, because it was probably the UK settlers that made the streets like that to start with. But this video is 20 hours old. Oh, so the ad's still good. Well, let's just see what it was for. For wallet ad, or for a wallet. I mean, I've showed you the ad. If you want that, definitely give it a try, because obviously the stuff's here if you want to save yourself some good money. And yeah, this guy's channel was really interesting. I like this video a lot. It's just fascinating, this little area. I mean, I didn't really think there was places like this in the US, so it's the more you know there, right? But let me know your thoughts. If you've been to these places, or if there's other places in your cities or other places you've been to in the US, let me know where it is, how it was like, and yeah, all those things. But hopefully enjoyed, and until next time, subscribe. Peace.